All right. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Ann Johnson McDonald, principal at Nelson Whynder Elementary. And you just saw Alicia Kibwa, who's our grade primary teacher, and she used to be our reading recovery and early literacy teacher as well. And we first made this presentation in person a few months ago. And so it'll be interesting doing it again virtual. We'll have fun. Nelson Whynder is a beautiful school. It's located in the community of North Preston, which is just so outside of the city of Dartmouth. And today we just want to share with you, and I should mention our school and our community is predominantly African Nova Scotian, so that is historical and unique within itself. And so we want to share with you our journey and realizing that even with our journey, the key messages can apply to any school within our province as we actively strive for success in literacy for our students. So our learning intentions, participants will have a clear and a common understanding of the P2 literacy priority. And through discussion, reflection, and networking, participants will determine the next steps for their school or classroom in moving students to improvement and success. And a little later in our presentation, we do have a Jamboard. So I got the link here in the PowerPoint, but we also put it in the chat. So once we get there, you can find the link in the chat. Okay, first things first. Our journey at Nelson Whynder, transformation of school culture and journey to excellence. When I arrived, 3.5, 4 years ago, as is with any principal arriving to a new school, you want to find out the feel of the school and the culture and just academically where students are. And so we engaged in, had a PD day, we engaged in transformation of school culture, because when we kind of dived into where the school was and where we want the school to go. We had to begin by taking a good look at our school culture, our beliefs, our perceptions, our relationships, attitudes, and overall tone of our building. We had to explore the strengths, challenges, and interests in terms of our school environment, culture, students, and school community. We had to erase or work towards erasing any deficit thinking. And I can't emphasize that enough, because deficit thinking will stop your students from growing. And we had to insist upon academic rigor. That's why we're here, isn't it? To insist upon the academic rigor, clarify and have a common understanding of culturally responsive pedagogy, and make it a priority. We had to take a good look at the inclusive education policy. That's our umbrella. That's our tool. We had to, I'm jumping ahead of my notes here. Through TST and alignment with supports as a team at the beginning of each term, we look at each class separately and using a spreadsheet we created, sort of our version of a data wall, and record assessment level for reading, writing, and math, check off supports and interventions received, academic supports, social supports, our intervention teachers, our African Nova Scotian student support worker, and any cultural supports, and recognize any gaps in supports needed and fill in the gaps for every single child. And we do this specifically 3 times a year. Our team also meets in response to teacher requests and explore strategies. Anti-Black racism in education action plan. We had to take a good look at our professional learning within our region. We had a very targeted professional learning series a year ago. We're grateful to our HRCE diversity team, and specifically Rachel Ross, for partnering and setting the foundation for culturally responsive pedagogy and Afrocentric approaches to education. Because I mentioned earlier, our school is predominantly African Nova Scotian, so we really had to be specific in our cultural responsiveness. We spent time introducing the inclusive education policy in 2020-2021 school year, Our regional center prioritized anti-Black racism in education through the guiding principles of the inclusive education policy. We just picked it apart, applied it to our school, looking to see where our gaps are, looking to see where we need to strengthen, areas that we need to strengthen. So that each school had to reflect upon their practice, attitudes, and climate and come up with an action plan in accordance. And I was on the planning team for our region and for that series of workshops. Our school also looked at our student success plan. We engaged in updating our student success plan and goals and strategies through a renewed short cycle approach and responding there as necessary. Specifically in our building, we looked at fostering independent learners. One thing when we started pulling apart what was happening in our school, we noticed children weren't confident in their own capabilities. So we looked at ways that we could foster those independent learners, and specifically writing that into our SSP and looking at some of the works of people like Zaretta Hammond and just to get that support there. Another thing that we had to do was to look at next steps in supporting students that are not meeting. And that's really important. There's no sense in doing all this and then not going the next step. That's where that academic rigor comes in. And finally, just right resources. Shop, shop, shop. We had to look for beg, borrow, and steal, finances, whatever grant funding we could find, whatever donations we could bring in, pull that together, pool our SAC funds, and start shopping, start revising our school library and our classroom libraries. And with student input, we'd find book lists and bring them into the students, have them picking up high interest books. And then we'd look at just right books and looked at guided reading books, Afrocentric guided reading books. And we just shop. What we couldn't find, we go to a local store, Tattletales, give her a list, and she would find it for us. And so that our with the student input, our school library and our classroom libraries, more importantly, were revised. Okay, P2 literacy priority. What is it? This priority is based on a directive from our Deputy Minister of Education to ensure that all students are reading at grade level by the end of grade 2. Halifax Regional Centre for Education's priority is to ensure that students in grades P to 2 are reading at benchmark by the end of grade 2. The region will collect evidence of learning regularly in order to track student progress, look for trends in student achievement, and respond with appropriate supports. So rationale: focused, personalized, and intentional instruction will be the most responsive and impactful way to support learners' development of essential literacy skills. Instruction should be matched to learners' strengths, interests, and challenges relative to literacy achievement, and ongoing assessments are essential and provide evidence of learners' response to both instruction and intervention. Okay. So how are your children doing and how do you know? And that's not my quote. You've all heard that quote before. P2 teachers are asked to submit, or they were asked to submit reading data on a monthly basis, indicating whether students are meeting or not meeting. This is based on a variety of evidence, such as informal reading records, observations, anecdotal notes of students, reading behaviors collected by teachers during individual, small group, and whole group lessons. And this is not necessarily a formal running record out of an assessment kit. So it's just what teachers do, teachers should be doing on a daily basis, and collecting that assessment data and then determining whether a student is meeting or not meeting for that month. In our school, we believe it is still important for teachers to administer 3 formal running records throughout the year using the Fontenay benchmark kit to ensure that students are progressing with their reading skills. And this can be done prior to reporting periods so that teachers can use this information for report cards as well. So at our school, we did it in November, March, and June. And finally, engage in ongoing informal and formal TST and LC conversations. That is so crucial. Even just open your door and chatting with your neighbor. And then formally in our TST sessions, just talking about where the students are and where do we want to take them. All right, tools to support P2 literacy priority. Resources that are at your fingertips. A multi-tier system of supports. Tier 1, highly focused and intentional whole group instruction in collaboration with intervention teachers. Tier 2, small group evidence, informed teaching and intervention in collaboration with intervention teachers. And Tier 3, that intensive evidence-informed individualized support. And I found that my school had to be very strategic, not only utilizing the expertise of the intervention teachers, but also teachers who had additional non-instructional time once we, figured out all the preps and figured out the schedule. There were some people that still had some time left, particularly 4 to 6 teachers and some of the specialists. So scheduling them in to support literacy was crucial, and getting them, especially the specialists that needed some literacy coaching support, so that they can support that Tier 1 and that Tier 2, that's a small group intervention with students. HRCE Teaching and Learning Site, which houses quick links to a number of tools and resources. Other regions may have similar links to resources. However, anyone with a GNSPES account, which is all teachers across the province, can access the HRCE Teaching and Learning Site. Reading behaviors. HRCE P2 literacy list of reading behaviors that was developed by our literacy folks at the Regional Centre. And HRC literacy team developed a working document of a month-by-month reading behaviors for students in grades P2 to support teachers with knowing what behaviors to look for and to determine if a child is meeting or not meeting. This is not a checklist or an assessment document, but is an evolving tool. Encourage teachers, and they periodically encourage teachers to think about reading behaviors instead of just reading levels. EECD, literacy resource site, including information such as developmental reading continuum P3 and a balanced literacy program, responsive literacy document, essential skills document, and assessing literacy P3. And access to coaching, which is crucial. Teachers in our region have access to a literacy coach upon request, which supports collaborating with them to design instruction that builds student achievement. And the structure of literacy coaching is very effective. It's not someone coming in and evaluating teachers. It's someone coming in and working with the teachers and teaching students and helping to move students forward. Okay, P2 literacy priority, common understandings. Understand the benefits of flexible small group instruction, including connecting reading, writing, and word work. No one key component should be taught in isolation. The reciprocity between oral language, reading, and writing. What are the high leverage strategies? Understand the needs and challenges of individuals versus needs and challenges of the whole staff, where shared resources about principles of effective literacy and effective literacy practices. These practices are a foundation of literacy instruction in our school. Understand the benefits of informal and more formal conversations with colleagues. And I already emphasized that, whether it's in TST, it's having conversations with parents, it's having conversations with your neighbor next door. But those conversations are crucial. Promoting the love of reading. That part of that is your read alouds. It's having children involved in revising your classroom library, so they just grasp that joy of reading. And crucial are your next steps in supporting students not meeting. As previously discussed, our HRCE February PD Day was dedicated to student success planning with a focus on literacy priority work. As an extension to a small group carousel activity that we did, we then placed the guided questions into a spreadsheet with the expectation that teachers and teacher teams take a close look at each student that's not meeting expectations, so that instruction strategies are targeted and intentional to support the success of each student. And I have a handout I'll show you in a few seconds, that if I can share it properly, that you could see. We revisit this handout during TST discussions on a regular basis to support teacher suggestions and help grow teacher practice in response to student need. Again, emphasize the conversations and promoting that love of reading. And we'll see if Alicia maybe will help me. I just want to show you that handout before we go to the next turn and talk. So you'll notice, and like I say, we did this in a carousel activity at first, and then they developed it into a spreadsheet that we could use it for the rest of the year, really. So what are your, and each individual child would have this connected to them, each individual child that's not meeting. We call it planning for action. What are you doing that is making a positive difference? What are you struggling with? What are your next steps for literacy instruction and assessment, specific to that child? What are your responsive actions for students of African and Indigenous descent, ancestry? And how will these next steps connect with improving well-being and student achievement? And so as we went through the following months, I found teachers started becoming more specific in their plans for action. And so we'll probably carry this forward next year and see if we need to revise the handout in any way. So that's just a tool that you could use. And if anyone wants a copy of that, just pop me an email and I can send it in an attachment. Okay, I'm now going to turn it over to the teacher, because they are the ones that are doing this work. And so what are the teachers saying? I'm going to turn this over to Alicia.
All right, I will stop sharing the Jamboard here. Going to go back to sharing the screen in just a moment. I apologize if it looks like I'm looking multiple places. There's multiple screens here. So all of that while also trying to look at my notes. I tend to go off script at times. So all right. So as Anne mentioned, I'm the primary teacher here at Nelson Whynder, soon to be primary 1 in September. I'm going into my 10th year at this school, and I can't believe that it is coming up on 10 years already. Every day I get to come to this building and teach. It is an absolute blessing, and I'm so grateful for the connections that I've made with the students and the community and current staff and past staff, and it's just been great. So yeah, as Anne also mentioned, I'm coming off of doing reading recovery and early literacy support, so going back into the classroom full time. For the first time last year, I was really excited to kind of take some new knowledge into the classroom with me. So what are teachers saying, seeing, and doing? I guess at the beginning of the year last year, when we heard about this P to 2 priority, myself and the teachers to grade 2 at this school and friends outside of this school teaching at this grade level, and talking with people, it was kind of like something else, something else in an already kind of, if you would say, busy and not normal school year, coming off the heels of COVID and still very much being in it. And then, your documents are thrown at you. And so there was a bit of a confusion, maybe a bit of information overload as well. And a little bit of stress, I guess, with the already things that were stressful, even kind of outside of the school year, with COVID and everything like that. But as we got into it, seeing the benefits of such a priority and certainly the need for it for all students. Let's see. So what are teachers saying, seeing, and doing? Some challenges. So a variety of assessment strategies are needed to paint the whole picture for students. And being in a school such as ours, as Anne mentioned, where the majority of our students are of African descent, it can be difficult at times finding those texts that are engaging for our students, finding those texts that they see themselves represented in. They're not so quickly accessible to us at our fingertips. We really needed to go searching and digging deeper and ensuring that we are filling our classrooms and our classroom libraries with resources that really reflect our students, so that they could really just have a love of learning, a love of reading, and enjoy that. So that was a bit of a challenge in the beginning. A challenge that we certainly rose to. Something that I tend to do in my own classroom. We do a lot of our own books. No better way to see yourself than to physically see yourself. So we do a lot of creating our own text and different things like that. And that I found that was super helpful, and certainly something that really, really amped up student engagement. So that was great. Formal reading assessments, as we all know, do not necessarily measure all progress. And so when Anne had mentioned that document coming out and thinking more outside the lines of reading levels and what are the behaviors that the students are doing, what are those reading behaviors, and kind of teaching to that. And when you shift your mind and your thinking into that, it became a lot easier, I guess you could say. And so difficulty in finding assessment tools that are culturally responsive and engaging for our students. Again, just doing a lot of searching for text, searching for just right books, good fit books, level texts that can be engaging and something that the students are reaching for, rather than the same thing that they're seeing over and over again and not ever seeing themselves. So in an effort to overcome some of these challenges, we've revised our school and classroom libraries. Here's a picture here. It's not my classroom. Those are thinking those are not primary students. That's our grade 3 teacher. And that class specifically got really excited to kind of be their own librarians, if you would. And so they were very much a part of the decisions in purchasing of the books and what books went into their classroom library, as were all classes, really, even at the primary level. Speaking with my students, we did a lot of book shopping, a lot of tasters where it's like, we'll get a little taste of this book, just a little piece of it. Is it something that we'd want to read more of? Do we enjoy that author? Do we want to choose more books from this author? So really engaging them in the process so that the buy-in was there for them. I tend to talk fast, so I'm gonna breathe and slow down a bit. One moment, just checking my notes. And considering student, like our students, the home language that they bring here, when it comes to writing text, the interesting about it is that we can write them to the structures that are already comfortable for them. I'm thinking back to years ago when I first started here, and actually Melissa, who's on this call, when you were back in the class years ago, she was a grade 6 teacher here, and we did a lot of book buddies, and we would actually take level texts at the primary level that my students were looking at, and with the help of her grade 6 students, we'd look at some of those language structures, and now how do we change them into structures that are familiar to our students. And that was an exercise that we did often and that the students thoroughly enjoyed. And so when we didn't have text that were engaging to them, and readily available at their fingertips, we could engage in different activities like that, that would pull that engagement out of them and have them dig deeper into those same level texts that they might not always want to reach for. That was just a little activity that we used to do. Different strategies. So as Anne mentioned earlier, the alignment of supports within our school, ensuring that we're utilizing everybody and having those conversations really with everyone. I think there was a question on the Jamboard. What do you do if a student is we don't see that progress, or we don't see it as quickly as we think we should be seeing it, or whatever the case may be. And the best thing is to just talk to one another. I'm constantly in conversation with other teachers. I don't have a grade level partner, as we are a smaller school. However, those teachers, especially within the P2, we talk a lot and we talk often, reaching out to the reading recovery or early literacy support teacher in the building. And sometimes it might just be on the fly, because as we know, we are super busy, as are all teachers and anybody working within a school setting. So it might just be, a quick check-in in the morning, and, oh, I'm going to check something for you and I'll get back to you. But just really reaching out to your network, I guess, and the people around you. And it might spark something that you aren't even thinking. Even for myself, having come off the heels of reading recovery and early literacy support and receiving all of the PD and the training that revolves around those interventions, I still find myself reaching out to people in the building, because there's always somebody that has a suggestion or an idea that I have yet to try, or I have yet to think of, and let's try that. Let's see if that will work for the particular student. So having the alignment of supports is really, really important. And with that, providing opportunities for more guided groups, because if we're utilizing everybody in the building, and there might have been times, as Anne had mentioned, that I might have a specialist teacher in my classroom. Well, now I can, have one more group in addition to what I was just able to do with just myself in the room. So ensuring that I'm planning with intention, so that we can really maximize the time with the adults in the building, and how can we all service the needs of the students within each classroom. And again, collaborating as often as you can, to ensure that you're really giving the students what they need. Successes. So some of the successes and things that we've been doing, I mentioned networking a few years ago, even before the P2 priority. I know Anne had looked at networking of schools, where we looked at different co-teaching models, kind of open door multi-classroom model, and then COVID hit, and that kind of stopped that. We were kind of all, secluded to our own little space, and in many cases, our students to their own desk, and things, of course, had to evolve and change. And so when things changed again, and we were able to be, I guess, more free in the classroom, I guess, and get back to some sense of normalcy, we looked at ways that we can bring that back into the classroom. So this past school year, I did a lot of team teaching with our grade 1 teacher, Nathan, and we had a primary 1 cohort, and we were together at least 3 times a week for various literacy lessons. Sometimes it revolved around reading, sometimes it was our writing, and other times it might have been other subjects that we integrated into that as well. But it was great, because in our meetings, in our PLC times, we could identify the needs of our students. And if we identified a group of students that might need the same thing, maybe some of my primaries and some of his grade 1s were noticing similar things with their reading behaviors. Well, let's take those kids for a group. And so it allowed us to really work together, and really work smarter and not harder, if you would, to attack the needs of the students in a sense. And so there might have been times that I'm doing guided groups that included some of his students, and he's doing the same with some of my students. And so they were kind of all shuffled together at those various times. And again, that networking piece, that open door and that multi-classroom in the sense that we were able to really look at co-teaching and team teaching together, and we found that to be extremely successful. We saw a consistent rise in our students in terms of literacy and them meeting benchmarks and that sort of thing, because we found that students that perhaps it was difficult for him to get to, we're now getting kind of what they need in a guided group with me. And same thing on the other hand for myself. I might have had some primaries that were, say, if they were a bit higher and I'm focusing so much over here, they were able to be in a group with the grade ones at times, or in a guided group with him. And so it really worked. And so we found a lot of success in that. And we're really excited to continue with some of our cross cohort work this coming school year as well. So that allowed for more small group instruction, more guided groups. And it was just really high impact strategies that we could use to increase our student achievements.
And just before we talk about the pause and reflect, I just want to share with you, I remember when we did this earlier in the year, and Deputy Minister yelled out, "Ann, talk about your data." And I didn't have any data with me. I don't have it with me today. But what I do want to say is that when we really started focusing our academic rigor and our collaboration and just focusing what we do, we saw change. I remember after the first shutdown from COVID, teachers coming back and just being stressed because my students missed all this reading. Like, our grade 2 group this year, we call that the COVID group because they were grade primary in the first lockdown, grade 1 in the second. They just missed so much. And so teachers is really being targeted. When we think of that grade 2 group, even coming into this year, looking at so many students were not meeting. So many are not meeting. But by the end of the year, that was a complete change, and just seeing the progress in the grade 1s and the grade primaries. And so when you're really targeted in what you do, you will see change. Have patience, you will see change. So pause and reflect, and you can do, this is something that you can, do on your own time. But list 3 big ideas or reaffirmations that clarifies the purpose and journey to excellence encompassed in the P2 initiative. 3 big ideas that you may have heard today, or either from the presentation, or even maybe something that was put in the chat in the sharing. And then what will your next steps be when you return to your school and your classroom in the fall? What are going to be your next steps in helping to guide this forward? And we talk about P2 initiative, but this also applies across the board to the rest of our students, but we're focusing on P2. And I think this year it's going to be P3. I think so. It's going to change to P3. So, what will be your next steps? Are there any final thoughts that anyone want to turn on their mic, and any final comments? Again, we enjoy presenting and we enjoy sharing because we're excited about what's happening here at Nelson Whynder. So hopefully that excitement is encourage you to be excited about what's happening in your buildings and what's going to continue to happen in your building. Alicia, did you have any final words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom? No.
I know she doesn't want me to say this, but Alicia is, she's rolling her eyes. She is now published. She has a new book that's coming out when?
In the fall.
In the fall. Title?
Our Families, Our Homes. It's actually level text, so hopefully there will be more. But yeah.
Yes. She's very modest about this, but I'm very excited. I can't wait to see it and to have our kids engaging in it. Melissa, did you have any closing remarks or anything that you wanted to say?
No, I was just reflecting. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Excited to hear about Alicia being published. That's so awesome. I know it's going to be wonderful for our children. But thank you for a wonderful presentation.